Hello, Airbus Cockpit Coach here. You're joining me inside Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 with the Phoenix A320, and in this video we'll explore the de-icing process, the different types of de-icing fluids and holdover times, which are all key to ensuring safe flight. So the de-icing process itself is the removal of ice, frost or snow from the aircraft surfaces. As pilots, we need to ensure that the aircraft surfaces are free of ice, and that's essential for maintaining the aerodynamic performance as we pass through the takeoff phase of flight. As pilots, when we arrive at an aircraft and icing conditions are present, we will conduct a contamination check. So we'll walk around the aircraft, looking at all the surfaces, seeing where the ice and snow are built up, and that will help guide us in terms of filling out our de-ice request form, which is something pilots fill in and pass to the ground handlers to order our de-icing service. Key areas, as mentioned, obviously the wings, so you don't want any ice build up on there or snow, that needs to come off. Any build up on the lifting surfaces will decrease the angle of attack at which the aircraft will stall, and the aircraft will also stall at a higher speed, so that's something we do not want. And that is a critical risk to flight safety. Obviously all our control surfaces on the wings need to be free of ice and snow. The same with the elevator, that needs to be clear, and the tail fin. Sometimes when snow is coming down at an angle and it is very cold, you'll see it build up on parts of the tail fin. And we also need to ensure our rudder is free of ice and other contamination. So they're the main target areas we'd focus on. The fuselage we can accept up to 3mm of frost on the fuselage, and how we'd look at that, usually if you can read the black text around some of these markers here on the aircraft, you're safe. If you can't, you're going to need to de-ice the fuselage as well. So once we've gained an overview of how our aircraft it looks from a de-icing point of view and where that build-up is, we also then consider what the temperature is and is there still precipitation occurring. So as an example, if it's snowed very heavily during the night and we've got a huge amount of snow on the aircraft, inches of snow on the fuselage and wings, all built up, but actually the temperature's sort of risen a bit, it's around zero, there's no further precipitation forecasts, so we just need to clear the aircraft. We'll just need to apply what we call a stage 1 de-ice, most likely in that event. And that's where we use the type 1 fluid. So there's 4 different types of fluid. Type 1 is for clearing the aircraft down of the ice that's present. It's a hot glycol based solution, usually orange, and the de-icing crew who are trained to de-ice aircraft look for icing and know where that builds up and are trained in applying that into the correct places. We'll give the aircraft the appropriate application of that fluid, remove all the snow build up and contamination on the aircraft in all the key areas, taking that down to a normal contamination free state. If we had the same situation but it was a little bit colder and there was still snow falling, we would then need to consider a 2-stage approach, which is where we use the type 1 fluid initially to clear the aircraft and then look to apply an additional application of either a type 2 or usually a type 4 fluid to provide us with extra protection for a certain period of time, which is known as the holdover time, until we reach the air runway, so the aircraft does not become contaminated again by the precipitation before departure. If you use GSX in the simulator, you do have 4 types of solution available there to be selected. I see it doesn't allow you to select the 2-stage approach, so it's one solution only. So type 1 is for clearing the aircraft down, getting rid of the contamination. 2, 3 and 4 are increases in viscosity and allow an increasing amount of holdover time. We generally don't use type 3 on the Airbus, as that's designed for slower aircraft, so more of your turboprop based aircraft. Fluids types 2 and 4 generally slide off the aircraft once the aircraft reaches 100 knots, because we don't want to retain that fluid on the wings for the duration of flight. Obviously slower aircraft may not exceed 100 knots just as it sort of lifts off, so you consider using type 3 to provide your holdover protection. Type 2 comes off on a higher speed aircraft at around 100 knots. It has more viscosity than Type 1, so it has an increased protection level. So you see here on GSX we've got our different types. Generally, sort of Type 4 one, shall we say?
Begin treatment now and observe. Fluid type 4. Concentration at 100%. I will call you back when ready.
GSX mentioned concentration type there as well, and that's something we need to consider. So we have what's known as holdover charts, where it shows the fluid, the concentration, versus the conditions that we have. So we may increase the concentration to provide us with more holdover time if conditions are particularly adverse. It's very cold and precipitation in any form was particularly heavy. Or you may reduce that if it was, just below 0 and precipitation was very light. I will put a link in the video description to the FAA documentation around this and holdover times. There's a whole load in there based on different manufacturers, but if you look at the generic charts for aluminium and composite-based aircraft, because there's differences for the different types of fluid, that will give you a good guide and is a good reference point for use in your simulators.
The icing and anti-icing completed, and the icing code is fluid type 4. Concentration at 100%. I am disconnecting. Good day.
If you are using the two-stage approach, so you're having a Type 1 fluid and a Type 4 fluid applied, for example, we need to start our holdover time from the moment the second fluid is applied, so our Type 4 in this case. So as soon as that begins to be applied, we'll make note of the time, and that's when we base our holdover time from, and that's really important. We base our holdover time on the weather at the time, factoring some of the forecast, but that may change on our taxi out after we've had the fluid applied. So if precipitation suddenly increases, so we go from light snow to heavy snow, all of a sudden our holdover time is going to decrease, and we need to review that. So we may get to the runway and get to a situation where, due to the change in weather, and also a delay with air traffic, so we may be held there for longer than we expect, we may run out of holdover time. In that situation, we need to taxi back to an area where we conduct the sort of pre-takeoff contamination checks. So essentially the process is starting again. So we begin the whole contamination check. What do we need for our departure in terms of de-icing again, based on the current conditions? We start from step 1 there, run through the process. If you do look at the charts, you'll see in some of those that there's a red area to one side, and particularly where we have freezing rain, for example, and very cold conditions, it's impossible to provide a holdover time, in which case an aircraft will not be running departures in some of those conditions. So you do see times where aerodrome is completely closed due to icing and the conditions, and that's one of the reasons why, because the fluids cannot provide a holdover time for things like freezing rain and drizzle and very low temperatures. Another consideration as part of our contamination checks, and when we're completing our paperwork, requesting the de-icing service, is the possibility that the aircraft's come in, it's been turned around, we're just taken on an aircraft that has landed, that it's going to have very cold fuel in the tanks, so the surfaces of the wings are going to be very cold above the fuel tanks. And if there's rain falling onto those surfaces, it can freeze, and that freeze is clear, it's not very visible. So as part of that form filling, the ice request form, we can request a tactile check of the aircraft, which is where a member of the de-icing team will physically touch and feel that surface of the aircraft to make sure there is no clear ice present. The de-icing crew are obviously experts in what they do, and they will sign off the de-icing of the aircraft once it's completed, providing us with all the relevant information such as fluid type, concentration, brand, when that's was first applied, so we can calculate our holdover times effectively using the charts available. So in summary then, we need to conduct a contamination check, combine that with the forecast and current conditions, decide on whether we need a one-stage or two-stage de-icing process, decide on the fluid type that we need to use, it will either be 1, 2 or 4 with the Airbus, usually 1 and 4, and the concentration. We need to consider whether a tactile check is required as part of that as well. We need to note our holdover time from the application of the second stage of fluid or completion of the first stage, if it's a one-stage process. And we need to monitor the conditions while we're on the ground up to our departure, making sure we're within our holdover time, and whether that holdover time is changing based on increasing precipitation or changes in temperature. That's really important. If you do refer to the charts, you will notice there are some there which are very restrictive in terms of holdover time. Some of them are very low, making a departure within that time very unlikely, especially if you're at a busy airport. Only the most efficient de-icing operations where that's occurring close to the runway will allow that to happen. So take a look at that. It's quite interesting, and you'll see how complex it can be. And yes, there's a cost to de-icing the aircraft. Selecting, the more expensive Type 4 fluid has a cost, but coming back round and having to repeat that process and delay your flight is also going to have a greater cost. So there's a lot to think about there, and there's a fair bit of pressure in that kind of circumstance as we experience as flight crew. Always with icing, err on the side of caution. Ultimately, it's the captain's responsibility to ensure that their aircraft is free of ice and safe for flight. I hope you found that brief overview useful. If you have any questions on that, please drop them in the comments. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest content. Thanks for watching.